Hello, friends. Today we are going to talk about parentification and why certain people marry certain people. We're going to get into it. Let's talk. Hi, friends. This is Bethany Jennings, and you're listening to We Should Talk. It's a podcast where we talk about anything and everything to encourage, equip, and empower you to be a decent human. Let's talk. Well, let me describe the setting for you. I am currently laying beside Onyx in my bed, he is making shadow puppets with the light on the back of my phone. He's sleeping with me tonight because Daddy is on an airplane on his way to Norway. So the boys and I stayed home with this one, because Silas was having some health concerns that we don't need to get into, but it was just better for the boys if we stayed home. It's a lot on their little bodies being on an airplane that long and time change. So if you hear Onyx during this episode, that's what is happening. He is laying in bed beside me, not going to sleep, like he said he would. Okay. So yeah, David's on his way to Norway for a week and some days, and I am laying in bed beside Onyx. If you hear the phone get hit, it's because he keeps getting close to the phone with his hand while making shadow puppets. Okay, so last week we talked about parentification and what that means, and what it looks like. There's two different kinds of parentification and all those things. So now we're going to talk about the adult. Hey, Onyx, be careful, bud. Don't hit the phone, okay? Now we're going to talk about, as an adult who was parentified, why certain people end up with certain people. So we're going to talk about why the parentified daughter ends up with an avoidant and passive son. One of the consequences of being parentified and being a parentified child is that sometimes your adult relationships suffer. Buddy, don't touch the phone. Look at mommy. Look at mommy. Look at me. Can you hear me? Can you see me? I've asked you 3 times. Please don't touch the phone again, okay?
Mommy, you're silly.
You're kind of silly too, but I love you. Okay.
You're kind of silly to not give me your phone.
I know it. Okay, so the parentified daughter ends up with an avoidant passive son. Why does this happen? We talked about one of the consequences being your adult relationships not being healthy and, fitting into certain categories. So let's talk about that for a second. So as a parentified daughter, remember parentification is where a parent responsibility, be it emotional or practical, is put on a child. The parentified daughter was conditioned to be responsible for everyone and everything. And it's likely that she grew up having no one focusing on her emotions and what she needed. And so in that chaos and that confusion of everybody else's attitudes and moods and emotions everywhere, she learned to manage the mood of everyone around her. She became a mood manager, right? She learned to check in on them and take care of them and make sure they were okay and make sure none of the ticking time bombs go off, right? That's what happens when a person's emotionally parentified, is they become the parent and they have to manage and regulate moods and emotions. Now, that's the daughter, or, the spouse, the wife. Then she usually ends up with the avoidant passive son. So what does that mean, avoidant passive son? Well, usually if it's an avoidant passive son, he felt pressured, a lot of pressure, a lot of control by one or both parents. Like they controlled aspects of his education, they controlled all aspects of his social life, they controlled lots of pressure to perform, lots of pressure to meet certain standards of perfection. And so he coped with that. He will, an avoidant passive son who feels that pressure and over controlling, he will cope by performing. And by performing, I mean like he'll meet certain requirements or whatever, but he will perform as in like he'll put on a show so that he has the appearance of having it all together. He's the quote-unquote good boy, and everybody can depend on him. He's very dependable, very steady on, solid rock, right? Now, that's what he is performing. Remember, it's a performance. It doesn't mean it's actually how he feels and how he, is internally. But he has to be able to perform as the good boy, the dependable one. So why is the parentified daughter, who is a mood manager, drawn to the passive son who's used to putting on a performance? Because he is actually interested in her inner world. And most of the time, that parentified daughter has never had someone who actually cares about her emotions. And so when someone does, she's very drawn to that. She feels seen with him. She feels like she'll be taking care of him. And his usually calm demeanor will soothe her hypervigilance. So because he had to perform and have it all together, it seems like he's very calm. But that's not always the case internally. And because she was a mood manager, she had to be hypervigilant and manage her siblings' moods, her parents' moods, her guardian, whatever. And so he's chill. She's high anxiety, hypervigilant. And so he calms her down. And while he seems calm, it's really at times him disassociating from the setting. But his tendency, his likeliness to disassociate, to withdraw from the setting, to mentally be somewhere else, emotionally be somewhere else, that feels safer to the parentified daughter than high reactivity. Because remember, she was busy managing everyone's moods, making sure none of the ticking time bombs went off, walking through the minefield and trying not to get blown up. That's what she's accustomed to. So though he is completely disassociated, she'll read that as, oh, he's so chill, he's so calm. And I'd rather him be that than highly, highly reactive, which is what I grew up with. Right? And the passive son is very drawn to her caretaking. So the hypervigilant daughter is drawn to him because he appears calm. And he is drawn to her because she is more than willing to take care of him. That was one of the consequences. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, you need to go listen to it. That was one of the consequences of being parentified, is that you're always mothering or fathering your spouse. So the passive son, who is pressured to perform and pressured to take care of things and meet certain standards and have it all together, he's finally receiving that caretaking that he has wanted and needed. And she's loving and easy, right? Oh, I'll take care of it. Don't worry, honey. It's not a problem. Because she's used to managing. And that is a very welcome break. A very welcome change from the childhood pressure he has experienced. So, as the relationship develops, he is more and more avoidant and withdrawn and passive, and he's disassociating more. And so the hypervigilant daughter says, the parentified daughter is saying, oh no, what's wrong? What did I do? And then she's trying to manage his mood, trying to make sure he's okay. But because he's so busy trying to have it all together and put on this performance of perfection, when she tries to talk about the issues and manage it and work it out, well, then he gets very defensive. The passive avoidant son will get very defensive because he's very sensitive to any kind of criticism, because that's all he got as a kid, right? And now he's supposed to feel safe with her, and it's supposed to be easy with her, and now all of a sudden she's not being easy, and so now he's got more pressure, and his response to that pressure is going to be defensive. He's intensely sensitive to perceived criticism, and now he wants to know why isn't she easy? What changed? And then the real issue, that high reactivity, is because he is feeling vulnerable because all of his flaws are on display. At least that's what he feels like, right? Because a lot of time a highly controlling, high pressure childhood has to do with the tiniest flaw being blown hugely out of proportion. And so he feels like all those flaws are on display. Well, once that happens, she's mothering him, taking care of him, but he's getting more and more avoidant, disassociating more and more, just because life happens and that's what he's used to doing. It's what he's accustomed to doing. That's how he learns to cope. And then she's like, oh no, what's wrong? And so he tries to talk about it, but he's being defensive and feels like she's being highly critical and all his flaws are on display. And so once again, the wife starts to feel emotionally abandoned and alone. And while he used to take interest in my inner world and want to know about me when no one else ever has, well, here we go again. It's my childhood all over again. He doesn't want to be with me. He doesn't want to talk to me. He's supposed to be in his own world. He doesn't care about me. And so she'll be reaching more and more, trying to manage the mood, manage the relationship. And he's going to pull away more and more because he doesn't like feeling controlled. And then we start seeing the cycle. She pursues, he withdraws. She manages, he disassociates. That is the cycle. So, how do we fix that? How do we fix that? Let's start with the passive son. As the passive son, if you see this, recognize this in yourself or someone you know, just think about what would happen if they applied these possible steps to finding a solution. The passive son needs to learn how to emotionally regulate in order to fully listen. Because when she's asking questions, she might not be accusing you of doing anything wrong or being imperfect. But because the passive son is so accustomed to criticism and over critiquing and any mistake being put out in hyperbole, then he immediately goes defensive, and so he stops listening to what's actually being said and just starts hearing criticism. So learn to emotionally regulate in order to fully listen. Also, maybe reassure that parentified daughter, you're not alone in this. That's going to require you to be more present in the moment and recognize when she's doing that. But reassure them, you're not alone. I am here. I actually do care about you. And in doing that, maybe ask her questions about what she's interested in, what she's feeling. What do you think about this situation? And then once she opens up and starts talking to you, you could ask her, okay, how can I help you? What can I take off your plate so you don't feel quite as overloaded or stressed? Because again, one of those long-term consequences of parentification is hyper-independence and not wanting anyone to help you, and you have to solve it all, and you feel less than if you need help. So be emotionally regulated enough to fully listen to what she's saying. Reassure her you're not alone in this. ask questions about her. And the one of those questions needs to be, how can I help? So then the daughter, how can we take steps towards being better? Well, stay curious and accepting of your significant other. Because a lot of times there are interests and passions that a highly controlled, highly maintained child has that they were never able to fully explore or just kind of seek out what they actually wanted. It was, this is what you're doing. This is where you're going to college. This is what you're studying. This is what. And so a lot of times there are things they're interested in that they may not feel safe exploring. But when you ask them and you stay curious and accepting of all of their different things that they might be interested in, or all of their different quirks that they've had to hide their whole life, that makes them feel safe. And practice out of controlling his emotional experience. Let him have his own mood. Don't tell him what to feel. Don't try to manage his mood. Let him feel what he's going to feel. A parentified, a person who's experienced parentification, emotional parentification, you feel the need to manage emotions and make sure everybody's happy. But no emotion is a bad emotion. They are given to us as tools. They are God-given tools. And we just got to learn to listen to what they say. Let him feel all of his feelings and just give him space to feel it. Don't rush him. What's up, Onyx? How can I help you?
I want to think again.
Oh, you need some water? Okay. Sorry, friends. Here, baby, here's the water. Okay. In staying curious, sorry, brief intermission for a water break. In staying curious about him and in letting him have his own mood and emotions, reassure him that you love him for who he is and not just what he does. Compliment him, not just on a job well done or a performance that he has achieved, right? Baby, I love you. Just you. Oh, all done? Right? So make sure that, you can definitely compliment things he does, but make sure that's not the only thing you're complimenting. And that way, he doesn't feel that pressure to perform that he is very, very accustomed to feeling. And one last thing. So when you are practicing, I should have said this one earlier. When you're working on not controlling his emotions and not managing his mood, one thing to avoid is the absolute statements. Avoid absolutes if you can. So you always act this way, or you never open up to me. The always, the never, those are absolute statements. And that may be how you feel, but that may not be reality, right? Your feelings are real, but they're not reality. So avoid those, because when you use those absolutes, that's just going to make him clam up. He's not going to feel safe opening up to you, right? So absolutely feel free to discuss. Listen, I feel like maybe you're not opening up to me as much as you could, and it would help me understand you more if you did. That's a safer way. Right? Instead of saying, oh, did that break? Instead of saying, you never open up to me. You always shut up when we start talking. You always clam up. Your brain goes somewhere else, right? So it's more accusation than anything. So anyways, there are certain types of people that do end up together. There are very common couples, quote unquote. Maybe I should do an episode on common couples, like types of people who end up together. I will also say that this is research based, and observation based as well. So there are things that I see and observe in patterns of people, but there's also things that I research. And there's lots of really cool resources out there that you can use as well, that talk about these things. So this is not all my research, but it's research that I've looked into and observations that I've made. So anyways, this is the follow-up episode that I promised I would give to you guys this week after Parentification that was published last week. So if you've not listened to Parentification, go back and listen to it. It's very nerdy. I think a lot of my episodes so far this season have been nerdy. Sorry guys, but I can't say I didn't warn you. I'm a nerd. So go listen to that one and then re-listen to this one so you'll know what I'm talking about. So that is why the parentified daughter ends up with the avoidant passive son. I pray that this episode and all of these episodes are helpful to you, and I encourage you to consider them in your journaling and devotion and prayer time, and may they help you take steps to being a better human. All right, friends, bye. Well, that was fun. I'm glad you stuck around for the whole thing. And thank you for talking to me today. Y'all go like and follow and review and do all the podcast things that people do. And don't forget to be a good human.